Good evening, everyone. Ari and I just had a memory lane laugh fest for about a good 10 minutes. We have our
Cheers.
drinks ready to go. Ari has some witch's brew, and I, per the usual, have my strawberry lemonade truly. So we are truly ready for the evening.
Right.
That was bad. That was really bad.
It was great.
So, welcome back to Restitching the Tapestry, everyone. We are on episode 15. It is amazing to think that we are on 15. Like it,
1-5.
it,
One
like
five.
we literally have gone an entire summer and part of the fall season doing videos, and it feels really good producing this content, having good conversations, being able to interact with all of you. So it's just so fun. So hi, Arpy. Hi, Igni. It's good to see both of you. So, before we get started, Ari, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm ready for tonight's episode. I'm looking forward to the content. I think that we're going to have a great show. I've got poetry all set up. I'm ready to talk about jobs. I'm ready.
Yeah, like essentially tonight we're going to take you on a very interesting journey, talking a little bit about our job histories and how creativity has at times not necessarily been compatible with work. And we're going to discuss why that is, why people tend to struggle with that type of thing, so on and so forth. And I think it'll be very interesting for all of you. Okay. So, before we get started, I would like to make sure that I read our show's mission statement. So, many witness different atrocities, large or small, that fray the social fabric around us. Much of the time, many may feel powerless and not know how to address such things. And this fray has gotten worse with the rise of social media, being able to share a trauma and have it be able to go viral where everyone can collectively watch it, react to it, and experience it in real time. Thus, allowing everybody to experience this massive scale of collective grief and outrage. So that begs the question of what can we do to mend the communities that have seen such considerable tragedy, or communities who are put in harm's way because of people who aren't acknowledging their personal involvement in such things. Through this show, our goal is to restitch the tapestry through creating conversation, through promoting creativity, and also talking about ways we can implement action. And all of this is done through educating ourselves, educating you, all of it, because they're both connected. So, before we get started, though, I think it's important that we talk for a few minutes about current events. So, Ari, would you like to share with the population what the
So,
hell's been happening in Michigan?
so Michigan's governor basically got involved in an assassination plot because of the stay-at-home order. So she decided to basically close down Michigan businesses, and basically because of the coronavirus. And so the Michigan militia, a group of how many people was it? Like 13?
13, but I know there's more people in that group. It's an extremist group.
It's an extremist Michigan militia group, decided that they were going to try and capture her and put her on trial and basically find her guilty of treason and murder her and her family. And someone infiltrated their group, got them on recording that they were going to do this, and they were going to blow up bridges, and that they were going to do all this stuff.
They were
Uh,
gonna, like, attack police officers, like, it was a very elaborately planned, in a terrifying way thing, yeah.
so what they did is they arrested all of these men today, and they're now sitting in jail. And it's made national news. And they were at the protests that happened. What was it, back in June?
Yeah, there were protests in April
The the
in May and June where, like
the May protests, the ones that
yeah.
happened in Lansing.
Oh, yeah, that was in June. Yeah, so they were there, like, protesting the closures, they were, like, storming the Capitol, fully decked out in like weaponry
Or
and
was it April? Was it
it like
April?
I think it was April. I know there's been multiple protests,
It
and I
was
think
it was the Lansing protest that happened. They were pictured at the protest,
yeah,
and
that was April, I think. Yep.
so Trump said where Trump was like, "You need to open up."
Yo, yeah, he tweeted, "Liberate Michigan" in all
Right.
caps.
So, and basically, there is now some contention about whether or not President Trump has like emboldened them, like caused them to be like more extremist, and so and whether or not that Gretchen Whitmer had to like censor herself to get like not only funding, but like whether or not she had to like censor herself to like save her own life, and like that she had to like move around, and that they were close to catching her at one point and they had to deploy the police force, and just it's just a huge mess.
A scary mess too. The truth is, this is just the latest example of the trajectory we've been on. And I know like I've been having a lot of debates with a lot of people about like, well, these people saying, well, Trump's not responsible for this. But the truth is, he's been making statements emboldening these extremist groups for a while now. Like, think of the debate that happened last week where he literally did not, uh, you know, call out white supremacists, where he literally told extremist groups like that to stand back and stand by. Like, that itself, I don't understand why it's not convincing enough for some people, you know?
Right, and where he
So
refused to, and where he was like, blame Antifa, and
mhm. Yeah, and it's just at the point where those who support him, I mean, there are some who support him that do call him out on such things, but it still just boggles my mind that people support him after all of this, because it's doing more division than it is unifying. And if you look at how it keeps having this snowball effect, it I mean, it's scary. It really is scary. So, we just wanted to briefly talk about that because, I mean, this show is largely about acknowledging current events and situations going on. And I really think that events like that definitely warrant conversation and acknowledgement, because because the people supporting him ideally want things like this to be ignored and overlooked, but we don't have the luxury of that anymore.
I'm just concerned about Governor Whitmer,
Me
and
too.
her safety, and I'm hoping that she's safe and that she's okay, and that's just what I'm hoping for. And I'm also hoping for the president's safety at this point because he's contracted coronavirus, and I'm hoping that he's doing okay at this point
Yeah.
because, um, he says that he's doing better, but is he doing better? And
Yeah, there's
I'm
not been a
hoping
lot
that
of
he's not a.
transparency.
I'm hoping he's not infecting other people. So I'm hoping for that at this point. And there's not a lot of information coming out about whether or not he's being tested or whether that information's coming out. Even though I don't personally like Donald Trump, I would prefer that he not infect other people and that he is better about not,
Well, and on a
then that
human like
he gives good information about it, and that he's responsible about doing being good about doing corona, being the best citizen he can
yeah.
about the coronavirus. And I feel like he's not being a very good citizen when it comes to giving information and taking care of himself and just doing the right thing when it comes to that he's like trying to like show a stiff upper lip, and that he's like, I can beat this and so can you. And it's like I feel like he's just not taking care of himself in a very responsible way right now. And I feel like it's just, it's supposed to be like that he beat this within a week and that, you know, that it's just like this minor thing and it's just not very smart or healthy and that it is for votes and
Mhm.
that, um
A show of strength. It's all about posturing, really, and it's sad that this posturing is taking place at the expense of those not privileged enough to be surrounded with the medical expertise that he's surrounded with, you know?
well, he's on a bunch of steroids right now, so he probably feels great, but, it's at what cost is the
Mhm.
problem.
You know,
And
I hope he'll be okay, like, on a general human level, like, I do want him to be okay, but I wish that he would care about whether or not the population is okay, and I don't really see that reflected because the truth is if you're going to dismiss this and downplay it, even though you have it, just as a show of strength, that's a significant disregard for
right, because
those
the
less
next person who
privileged.
gets it doesn't have the doctors, doesn't have the medical facilities, doesn't have the level of care that you're going to receive, and that
Mhm.
they won't just be able to pass this off as just nothing. So
Exactly.
it's just like he caught it early, but like someone who gets it may not be able to catch it early and may not have it may not be like as like he may have a very mild case, so it may not be such a big deal for him, but like someone may get it and it may be like a very severe case.
They could be immunocompromised or yeah, like yeah. So, it's a cause for concern, and I think that people need to be carefully watching and listening to what's happening right now because in 25 days, we have a very important decision to make. We have a vote to cast if you've not done so already absentee, but the well-being of many different groups of people are depending on the next 4 years. So I think it's important that we exercise our judgment and do what's right, you know? So, but yeah, we just wanted to reflect a little bit on those current events because, I mean, again, it's necessary. We need to do so in order to, again, keep that awareness going because it's truthfully the awareness that helps keeps us educated and knowing what we can expect and what we can do to make a difference ultimately. So,
Yep.
so let's talk about finding fulfilling work. Oh, I'm excited about this topic. I because our you and I have had so many jobs. So
I have worked since I was 16.
I guess I mean that is a perfect segue. So do you want to like talk a little bit about your work history? Like like what has it expanded in? Like what experiences have you developed?
What was your first job?
My
Like,
first job?
yeah.
No.
When
Let
did
me
you
take a
first start
drink.
working?
My first job was Kmart and I was about I think I was 19 when I got that job. I got hired in at Kmart as an electronics associate. Then they wanted to upgrade me to like uh, I don't know, a manager of that department like in a week, and I literally was like, it was like this roller coaster. I worked there for like 2 months, and then thankfully went off to school and didn't have that job anymore. But it was a horrible job.
I was 16 years old. I was still in high school. I was in band at the time, so I was shuffling band and work and classwork, and I had a boyfriend.
Wow, that sounds like a lot.
So I was working at Burger King,
Hmm.
and I still go to this Burger King to this day because I live in my
Oh,
hometown.
hmm.
So it's so weird to go to this Burger King now because I'm like, I used to work here.
Memory
But
lane.
it's so weird. It's so weird. I was a cashier and I worked there for probably about a year and a half. And I quit because one night someone stole my keys.
Oh my.
They stole the keys to my car, and I couldn't find them anywhere. I was looking around, I couldn't find my keys. I said, "Where are my keys? I gotta leave. Like, I need to go home. I can't find my keys anywhere." And the manager was like, "It's not my problem. I don't know where your keys are." And I was like, "I can't leave unless I have my keys." So then I called my stepdad and I was like, "Someone stole my keys."
Wow,
And
that's kind of
s-
scary. That is
and
scary.
so my stepdad came and got my car, and we had to change all of my locks. We had to change the locks on the house
I mean, that's
because
a prudent course of action though, like,
but like yeah, they stole our keys, and it was like such a huge deal. Cause like someone stole my keys. Like they stole all of my keys. And like it was like I never found those keys and nobody ever fessed up to it.
hmm, wow.
Like, why would you steal someone's keys unless you
I
were
don't
gonna do
know.
something unless you were, 1, messing with them, or 2, gonna steal something?
I mean, it could be either or both, you know? Like that oh, that's unsettling.
So then, because the manager wasn't helping me, and so then I was just like, I quit.
I don't blame you. Like, I mean, if like honestly, I wouldn't have felt safe in that situation if I knew that I had a manager who didn't care, you know?
So I was just like, I quit. And it was literally just that easy. I literally was just like, I quit one night.
So so like okay, so Burger King was your first job. Give us like a timeline of jobs that you've had after even after that.
Oh my god, it's been so ridiculous. I've had so many jobs in my life, and it's been such a weird, sordid history. I could not tell you how many jobs I've had in my life because I've had so many jobs, and I couldn't tell you, like I couldn't tell you all the jobs I've had because I've had so many. Um, I can tell you the sorts of jobs that I've had. Most of them have been in customer service. Um, I've had weird jobs, I've had fun jobs, I've had bad jobs, I've had just a lot of jobs. I think the worst job I had was I was a phone sex operator for a day. Um,
I didn't know that. That's new.
yeah, I was in Florida, as a phone sex operator for a day. That was a hard job, and I got really drunk at the end of the day, and I never went back. And I got owed $86. Um,
What a paycheck.
but yeah, and I said, "I can't do this job because" when I quit, I said, "I can't do this job because I have moral qualms with this job," and then they laughed at me.
Oh my god.
But then they were, like, pretending because it was kinda like a voice actor job because they, like okay, so, like, you had to, like, pretend you were, like, of certain, like, ethnicities. So, like, you had to pretend like you were Latina on the phone, or, like, that you were African American, or that you were, Asian.
Mhm.
And so, like, I did that really well, but, like, it was really hard. And they gave me a list of movies to watch in order to, like, make myself better, and I was just like, "They want me to be a stereotype. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I
Oh
can do
my
this.
god.
I can't do this. I can't become a stereotype. I can't do this. I have moral qualms with this. I have moral qualms with this." I can't. So that was a bad job. It was a bad job. This
Oh
is in
my
And of
god.
course, it's in Florida.
Oh my god.
Um,
Oh, that's interesting.
so I guess that did use a little bit of creativity because you definitely had to be creative in that job. Um, when I was there, it was in June, but everybody was dressed up because it was like they had like a costume week or something. And so everybody was dressed up in like they were dressed up kind of like 1950s style. I don't know. It was really weird. It was a really weird week when I went there. And like it was so weird because like here you are, all these people are like dressed up like they're in the 50s and like but it's like not like good 1950s, it's like costume 1950s, like
Oh,
like
the
bad
extreme stereotypes of 1950s.
like poodle skirts and stuff and like but these are like not small women, these are like big women.
Mhm.
And like they're doing like BDSM on the phone. and like
That's
I
interesting.
and like just all sorts of things are happening because it's a call center. So it's like all these things are happening around me at once. Like there's like BDSM and there's like regular phone sex and then there's like flirting and like there's just like this pure like I'm just listening on the phone and I'm just like
So many categories and positions. That's
I
no pun intended.
and I was just like okay, but it was just a really bad job and I was like, I can't. I can't. So that was my one day.
That sounds like a full one day.
It was a full 8 hours. I got a
I
full 8 hours
mean,
in.
I have not had any positions that interesting, of course. Um, I, like, I honestly, I could probably name off most of my jobs. I worked at Kmart for a while. I was an election worker for a long time. That obviously, since it was only a few times a year, it was like super not lucrative, and it was really tiring. I did that for a long while. I was a barista for 10 years. That was probably my longest job, and I really enjoyed it actually, even though customers were super annoying. I worked in clothing retail for multiple years. I worked as a marketing coordinator in an office. Um, I worked as a newspaper writer briefly, very briefly.
Oh, I worked as a newspaper writer for a while too. I did newspaper writing in college. I did it for money and for not for free. Um, so I did that at the college level. I worked for a couple papers and I also did worked for a community paper. So I did that for a while where I had an editorial
That's
because
really cool.
they thought I was funny. They thought my editorials were funny until I got the community paper job and then started writing these serials ones and then they fired me.
Oh God.
I got fired because this is how I got fired. The guy's girlfriend called me up and told me to stop hitting on her man. And I was like, I'm not? Question mark.
Wha-
It was really uncomfortable and I don't know how it happened, but apparently I stopped getting paid, so that's how it happened. So, I mean, that's how the cookie crumbles. uh I don't know. Community papers are weird. You just kind of roll with it and that's how you stop getting paid. But I was just like, I'm not gonna sweat it. It was $80
I
every 2 weeks, so I'm
I
not
worked
gonna cry about it.
I worked for a paper who didn't pay me. Like, I was contracted to write, like this was a different paper than the other one I wrote for, but it was like I was contracted to write, like, 3 or 4 articles, and they were like, "Oh, we'll pay you," or they even gave it to me in writing, and they never did.
No, I never got anything in writing. I was supposed to write, like, funny articles or funny editorials, and, like, I was in the humor page, and, like, I wrote all these, like, really serious editorials, like, about, like, how gay marriage should be legal and stuff.
Oh, I bet you they were raging over that.
They were.
Oh my god, that's beautiful.
I was like, "This needs to be serious."
Sorry that your internet's not working, Iggy. I hope it's working now. I just realized I should probably tune into the chat. Um, so beyond newspaper writing, I also I worked as a desk attendant slash security for a dorm complex. Which Ari, that's when Ari met me actually, is when I was doing that interesting job. Let's just say there were a lot of drunk people, and I saw far too much of people than I would have preferred. Um,
Around that time, I was working at Wesco, which is a gas station. I
I
worked as a
remember
guest
that.
I worked as a gas station attendant, 3rd shift. So I would fill the cooler and I would, do a lot of cleaning and, like, stocking, and I was a cashier. Um, that was, like, one of my favorite jobs because it was a corporate job. So, I got paid something like $10 an hour to work 3rd shift, and I got paid, like, 40 hours a week.
Wow,
So
that's good.
I got paid weekly.
Back in like 2008, that was really good.
It was good money. I made something like 300 bucks a week or something, and I was making really good money, and, they paid my first semester of Central, I was going home and working, like, 20 hours a week, and they paid for my classes.
Mhm.
So before I joined OGS and, like, stopped going to work, um, I I actually, like, would like, pay for my classes and stuff and keep working, and I would go home for, like, 4 days a week and commute, and they paid for a lot of stuff, but it was really hard.
Well, I know you had like a really rigorous class schedule too, and like doing all that on top of it, I can imagine was really taxing.
It was really taxing, and then that was on top of having a boyfriend who lived in Ann Arbor, who I would
Mhm.
drive to see every 10 days.
Wow, I forgot about that too.
Mhm.
Dang.
I would drive to see Kevin every 10 days. So so I was driving to the other side of the state, and then I would drive home, and it was just
In the
like,
exact opposite direction.
yeah. So
Wow,
I
that's a
was
lot of
just like,
driving. You spend
a
a
lot
lot
of
of time driving. Yeah.
spend a lot of time driving.
Interesting. Yeah, so that was our one of our jobs during our college days. And then for me, like after college, because like I really enjoyed the desk attendant job because I got very flexible hours. Everybody loved me. Although I did get punched in the face once, which was pretty horrible. Um, by a drunk person. Um, and After college, I went back to being a barista. I actually had that job at the same time as my college job. I would just go home on the weekends sometimes and work the barista job. And then after that, I got that marketing coordinator position. Then I worked at a couple of clothing retail stores. And then after that, that's when I started teaching. I got a graduate assistantship and then started my master's program. And now I am teaching. I've gone through a few positions in teaching. I used to be part-time, but now I'm a full-time professor. So,
And I kind of took a different route. I went to a magazine subscription place and I worked there for a while, and it looked like I was moving up through the ranks at that place for a while, um until I realized that I didn't like corporate work and I hated it and my life was a mess. And I kind of lost my mind,
oh,
so to speak. I had kind of like mini breakdown at that job, and I went into seasonal work, And so I just started traveling, and then I traveled around and I moved to Seattle, and I went to Seattle until I had my breakdown, and now I'm on disability.
Yeah, but now your creative life is flourishing a little bit more, right?
Now my creative life is flourishing because I'm on disability and I have the chance to be creative and to focus on creative endeavors because, uh, you know, I have that. I live outside of capitalism, and I actually have a question about that later on in
Oh, I
our
look
talk.
forward to it. Oh, yeah, we're gonna have quite a bit of conversation about capitalism throughout this because we both have, I mean, we both have had various experiences that could arguably be the cause of such an influence. So, now that that thought's in mind, we should probably get to our questions because we have quite a few questions. So, I think the first question that we should preface all of this with is how do you define meaningful work? So when it comes to striving for meaningful work, what do you think about?
I think something. Well, you know, honestly, I I've defined it in different ways throughout the years. It's something that like fills you with joy and fills you with happiness. And I've had meaningful work throughout the years that have been like very simple jobs, but like are are not creative. Like the Wesco job was a very meaningful job for a while, and it sustained me in my youth because it was what I needed at the time. Mopping floors um, was very meaningful to me. It got me through my depression of coming back from Florida, and I would look forward to mopping floors every night, and it made me feel good. I felt good just swishing that mop back and forth, and just the mundane task of doing that sustained me for a while, for over a year, and I could have probably done that for a lot longer than a year, but my mom said I had to figure out my life or move out. So I was like, okay, I'll go back to school.
Hmm.
And then um, I got into when I was in Seattle, I got into data entry, and I that sustained me for a while, where I was just taking keys on a keyboard. And actually, when I was here in Michigan too, data entry is meaningful work at times. It fills some need in me that of mundane task of just clicking keys on a keyboard and just doing something meaningless, like just
There's
it's
meaning and
mindless.
meaninglessness. It's
It's
like,
mindless.
yeah, like mindless, like certain mindless work can be meaningful. It's interesting that you mentioned that because when I was a barista, I felt that way too because I mean, I did that for 10 years. I worked for very good friends of my family, and I really enjoyed making drinks. I loved making coffee. I loved having conversation, getting to know the regulars. But sometimes my favorite moments were the late evenings where I would close at like 9 p.m. There was nobody. All I was doing was cleaning and stocking, mopping the floors, um, cashing things out. Like it felt good knowing I was doing that and that I would go home and not have that work come home with me. So it was a different level of wholesomeness for me. But when I became a teacher, that wholesomeness changed because now I'm like literally influencing people's minds. I'm like students are literally depending on me. And I think like knowing that I am making a difference, but also people needing me, like that helps give me a lot of validation.
Right.
But the fact that
Oh,
but now there's like more like there's more community involvement now that I am becoming more advanced in my position. Like there's more community involvement, influence, and I just find that very fulfilling in some way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And after my last episode, where I had to leave my job as a data entry operator, I told myself I was never gonna go back to just mindless work, that I wanted something more fulfilling than just mindless tasks. So, I'm looking for something with more to give me meaning, so but it sustained me for a long time, but it's
Mhm.
grown.
Well, and it's all that's what it's all about, you know? Like, what fulfills us, like, we discover that, and that's what ultimately is that growth, coming to new realizations about that fulfillment that we need. Igni says, "For me, a meaningful job is one that pays decently and that I can enjoy, with not a lot of interaction with people, like working in the back of Goodwill, sorting through donations is what I want." That's awesome. My partner used to do that actually. Rogue Agent Killer Rodan, P.S. Hi, it's good to see you. Wants to write adult themed stories. Go for it. Go for it. I think that's awesome. Um, you know, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit more too. When it comes to fulfillment, having jobs, like meaningful work means work that I can invest my creativity in as well. I really never experienced that until I became a teacher. Now I can actually infuse my teaching with my creativity. The only unfortunate thing is that it sucks so much creativity out of me that I don't have any left for writing, which is now a very significant, I would even say it's part of my career as well. So, which is weird to say. I've never said that before. Like, oh, I love it. Um, so, um, well, I guess we've kind of answered the second question. Like, when it comes to striving for meaningful work, what do you typically look for? Um, and I think we've both kind of touched on that, right? Like work that kind of just like leaves an impression, something that we can at least creatively put something in. But the bigger question, that is going to be a convenient transition into the remaining ones is, does creativity and work mix well? Or better yet, does art and work mix well? What do you think, Ari?
I think that, like, even the most mundane of tasks take a certain amount of creativity, that, like, even the way you swish a mop, you're gonna do it in a certain way that, like, is going to be is gonna take a certain amount of creativity. Like, I don't know. It
I think I know what you
be
mean.
because, like, you take your creativity and you're gonna think of new ways of doing stuff, and you're gonna think of new ways of, like, how to make your job better, and, like, you're gonna think of, like, ways to like, if you're good at your job, you're gonna think of, like, how to make your job better, and, like, how to do things faster, and how to do things, like, in a way that, like, in how to do it better than the previous person has done it, or how to do it in a way that, like, that someone hasn't done it before, or, like, and, like,
Yeah.
that's how you use your creativity, like, and that, like, you're gonna do your job so well that people are gonna notice, and,
Like,
like, that
and not only are they gonna notice, but you're leaving something of yourself behind too.
and, like,
Processes, procedures, you
Cause,
know?
cause that's what I did at the magazine subscription company, is, like, I did my job so well that they promoted me, and they promoted me to being a supervisor, and I taught them how to use the RSS feeds, I taught them how to use their email, I taught them how to, like, really, like, pay attention and, like, aggregate the information that they were receiving, because they weren't, like, paying attention to all of this information that's coming together from all of these 40 different publishers. They were just like being bombarded by information all the time, and they really weren't like paying attention to it as it was coming in and siphoning it down into one source. And I taught them how to like siphon it down into one source so they could read all of the information as it was coming through every day. And so all they had to do was just sit there and watch it as it's ticking through and coming up. And all they had to do was just like click through all the emails as they're coming through and go, oh, I have everything I need.
Mhm.
And so I
It made
taught
it more
them,
efficient.
I made it more efficient. And I taught them how to do that. And so because I used my creativity and my wherewithal to show them how to do that, and they were grateful.
And that in of itself is fulfilling too, because it helps us understand our worth as well. Like for me, like this happened very recently, like when the pandemic started. Um, the college where I worked really wanted to tap into my technological ability and awareness, and I ended up teaching other teachers and training them on how to use various methods and modes of delivering a class online, recording video content, editing that content, putting it in a repository so it could be linked to virtual classroom settings. So, like, and to me, like, it was very busy work, and there was a lot involved because I was juggling it on top of my own work, but it was so fulfilling.
That's
Like, it
awesome.
it felt really good being able to do that, so I think creativity and work can definitely mix, so long as you are being conscious of that. Like, what you do in your job is an extension of you, even though it might be doing the work for someone else, you
Mhm.
know? But building off from that, the next question that we wanted to discuss was, does capitalism have any negative impact on individuals doing what they are passionate about doing, or those individuals striving for creative fulfillment? So, just in general, what do you think about that?
I feel like capitalism always is gonna try to get to the bottom line and always try to make you work more efficiently and try to make you always, like, cut corners. So, like, they'll always try to make you they'll, like, make you, like, undercut yourself, and they sometimes don't always do what's best. They just will always make you do what's cheapest and what will be, like, what's in the best, like,
What will churn
what
out the
will
most? And yeah,
yeah, and it's not always what's best for the company. So, like, you're not always getting what's the most quality, you're just doing what's the most quantity, and, like, sometimes they'll just have you, like, overwork yourself and, like, overwork like, they'll just put you in, like, these really stressful situations and, like, put yourself in, like, these situations where you're under the gun and, like, where you're under the wire and, like, where you're doing things that, like, are just not under the most conducive of situations, and I don't think that capitalism is always, like, the best answer for things sometimes. Um, Sometimes I think that, like, they don't always like, I don't think it's always, like I don't think it's necessary, and I agree with, Rogue Agent that he there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but
mhm,
I think that sometimes companies wield it to a degree that it can get to a point of where, um,
right.
it becomes
Well,
a weapon.
capitalism is a tool, right? Like it's a philosophical construct in which to run a system. And
It's a knife.
yeah,
You can cook with a knife or you can cut with a knife.
right. And I think that if used efficiently and done so on a like considering like a humanistic level, then it can be very beneficial and productive, but also fulfilling for those engaging in with it. But we just see on a very frequent basis how like people in power often utilize that to their advantage, and they want to kind of consolidate that power and keep it, when in reality capitalism is meant to also benefit those engaging in it, other than those just in power, if that makes sense. So in theory, like, I mean, and in practice, I think it is beneficial. But again, there are people, individuals, and groups who use it to their advantage. And the truth is, I think one way that impacts creativity significantly is the commercialization of creativity. So I've heard my entire life, like I've always been told, Donnie, don't be a writer because writing will never make you money. And that kind of follows the philosophy of if it won't make you money, don't do it. There's been this very distinct association in our culture, like in our Western culture, that if you do anything creative and enjoyable, it's not something that people can consume. Therefore, it's not going to make you money to sustain yourself. And of course, we could talk about, uh, inflation and so on and so forth. So I'm
Yeah, I've
trying,
heard that too, that I shouldn't, that why am I painting and why am I writing and why am I doing the things that I'm doing? Like, why am I doing these things if I'm not making money off of them? And it's like, because I like doing them.
right, right. Um, and then additionally, I also think that one thing that contributes to it is the devaluing of the arts and humanities in education, because uh, since like there just seems to be this vilification of the arts, especially since again it kind of is an offshoot of that whole concept of like, well, the arts and humanities don't make money. It's harder to find jobs in those areas, so why do them?
Mhm.
Why invest in them? Um,
There's
so
also this push when I write a short story and I share it with somebody, they're like, "Oh, you should submit that for publication."
right. I mean, I can't lie, like I've also been responsible for saying things like that.
And it's like, what if I just wanna write a short story and, like, have it
Right.
just be beautiful and just, write a short story? But, like, getting published and making money off of it seems nice, but, like,
Well, I guess the sad reality is, for a lot of publication, for us writers, it's just about getting our work out there. Um, there are a lot of publishers who won't pay. Like, literally all the poems that I've published, aside from the book that I just got published, I've never gotten paid for one of them. It's all been about like the exposure and getting your name out there. And I think that we've been lulled into this belief that we're willing to settle for that, so long as we can get our stuff out there. So let's see what's going on in the chat. Let's see. Long term. I do agree with Igni in the sense that I think capitalism is very much adaptable to to accommodating the changing in times. But I also feel like there's like some sort of root to capitalism that's age old that doesn't change, if that makes sense.
I think that the way that capitalism is in our society in America, there is definitely some barriers that need to be put into place. Otherwise, it becomes rampant and out of control, and that we need to not have a full on, because the way that capitalism is in America, it's it's definitely not just a full on capitalist society. It's more of an oligarchy, and it pushes towards a monopoly, because companies will buy each other out, and they push towards this like this like system where it it companies will try to have as much money as possible, much greed as possible, and they push for that system. And it's true. It's not a traditional capitalist system. So you have to put barriers in place to keep them from getting out of control, and doing certain things that uh, to defend the worker, because
Mhm.
they won't even pay like minimum wage if they can help it. Um, and I think that like minimum wage needs to be like a national minimum wage needs to be raised, and I think that like the healthcare needs to be taken care
Well,
of.
yeah,
And
like a lot of like capitalism also includes like um the cost of living as well, which changes over time and fluctuates with the way the economy fluctuates. So like that's not taken into consideration, which to me that's not capitalism because capitalism is supposed to adapt. At least in my opinion. Like I'd have to do more research on that, but the last aspect, the negative aspect of capitalism on creativity is this fear of unoriginality. And there's this kind of, I think people are really um, infused with this fear that you shouldn't produce anything if it's not deemed innovative or original. And this concept of originality is very difficult to pinpoint because it's this kind of unrealistic perfection of, well, you're going to create something that's never been created before, when truthfully creativity, most of it is based on being inspired by other creative acts or outlets or product that we've seen. So I think that fear, that kind of like conditioning, discourages creativity sometimes. So Piggy Von Monroe, hello. It's good to see you. I don't think I've seen you in our chats before. So moving on to our next question, because I realized that we're literally at 51 minutes already.
oh boy,
We've been having good conversation.
we're
Um,
getting into the capitalism. Oh God,
I
it's
know,
getting
right?
serious.
um, so number 5, like our fifth question is, how do we stay fulfilled? How do we balance a creative life with responsibility? So my answer to that is acknowledging that creativity is a responsibility, you know? Like why would I devalue creativity and not consider it ever like a significant aspect that I would need to be responsible for? It's kind of like what Rogue Agent Killer Rodan was saying, like he's saying that I don't mind working for money um and working for my art. It's all, in a way, it is all work, right? Because like the whole goal is to produce something. So why should one, pale in comparison to the other, if that makes sense, right?
So what's the question?
Piggy's
What's the question again?
the question was, how do we stay fulfilled? How do we balance a creative life with responsibility?
I don't
And
have
and
many responsibilities these days.
well, I mean, there's paying bills
I do pay bills still,
and
yes.
creating a space for yourself and maintaining
I
that
do.
space.
I do that,
So
yes.
those are responsibilities, and they can be big responsibilities too. So I think that is significant. Maintaining social connections with people, to me, is part of that responsibility. Um, and if you know me very well, you know how, like, I'm a very introverted person, and sometimes I can get very socially taxed, and sometimes that impacts my creativity as well. So, Piggy says, "Hi guys, yeah, I'm new. It's good to see you here. Hopefully, you'll tune in for more of our live streams. We'd very much enjoy that." So the next question, living on the outskirts of society, or rather, when capitalism no longer becomes the issue, how does one find meaning? Okay. This is often also a problem with retirees, college students, those on disability, those living outside of the system, even temporarily. Ari, would you like to speak about that one?
So, basically, like, I create art and I create poetry and I write and I do things, when I'm on disability. So I don't have like a traditional job. So I create these things and I live outside of the traditional bounds of the capitalist system. So, I basically like I don't I don't live within the system of capitalism. Like I don't have a traditional job. Um, so I'm like, so like retirees have this problem, college students have this problem. Like when you live outside the bounds of creativity or outside of capitalism, it's sort of like you have this problem of like how do you stay fulfilled and how do you still live a meaningful life? And for me, it's like still creating art and still creating. I still like try to find meaning in my everyday life. And for me, it's like I write 6 poems a day. I create paintings every day. Um, I keep a schedule every day. Like I get up at 8 o'clock in the morning and I take a shower and I do certain things to like maintain a regular schedule like a normal person, but I'm on disability. So like um I try to like live a normal life, but like I'm not a normal person anymore. Not an I don't live an average life like that most people live. So it's just, I live outside the system, so it's harder for me to find the same kind of meaning that other people would find from traditional work.
That's really interesting. And I think that is a very significant experience to talk about because it's not discussed enough. In fact, often, like, I think people misinterpret it and misunderstand that experience too, you know? And I don't think that's fair. Peggy says, Ari is right. People should be craft even if it's just expressing themselves. You're not obligated to have a hobby that has to be lucrative money wise. Exactly. Yeah, I agree completely. And that it's interesting because that was a very difficult thing that I had to learn because as a teacher, like in higher education, I am expected to churn out publications. It's considered like professional development. And I really struggled because as a creative writer, I was really struggling with like I need to churn out this poetry, get it published because it looks good on my CV and can be used for promotion and I had to divorce my creative writing from my teaching so I could enjoy it again and not feel like this assembly line trying to churn out publishable material, just to gain an advantage in one part of my career. So, like, I very much had to remind myself that my writing career and my teaching career can be completely separate. They don't have to be this symbiotic thing working in tandem with one another. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now getting a book published this year, that was a huge plus for me. Like I wasn't expecting it. So but I was able to complete it and finish it on my own terms without having that over my head of like, I need to do this for a particular reason other than fulfillment, if that makes sense. So, oh, I need to catch up on the chat here. Let's see. I intended to reach you through Facebook when I was making my Godzilla videos. I will have to check those messages. I apologize for not getting them. Sometimes on Facebook, when people send links to videos, I don't get notifications for it. I think Facebook is really weird with regulating video links because even when I post them, sometimes they're not like dispersed to people's statuses and stuff like that. I don't know why. But if you could If I don't respond to the message, if you could email me or something, that would probably be good as well. DonnieWinter@gmail.com. So, okay, so you just don't want to post it because the art is graphic and you don't want. Okay, that's understandable. I'll have to double check. So how do you deal with negative self-talk and create about creativity when creating, dealing with rejection? How do you keep your ego in check when dealing with acceptance and praise? So Ari, are you okay with our episode going a little bit past the hour mark? Because I think these are very important questions that we should.
I think you should start with the next one.
The next question after this one?
No, this one.
Oh, you think I should start? Okay. Oh, how do I deal with negative self-talk and with rejection? Honestly, it took me a long time to deal more effectively with negative self-talk because I like a year ago, I literally was about to give up on writing entirely. Um, because there were no acceptances. I wasn't getting published anywhere. So the fact that I have gotten poems published recently and a book, that's been hugely validating. So I think success is a good way to overcome that. But I think also putting your work out there is important to a certain extent too, because when other people start acknowledging that you are good at what you do, that can also be validating. But here's the thing, if you don't have access to even that, then that means that this, like, overcoming that need to self-deprecate needs to come from within, and that's still something that I'm largely working on. So, like, my overcoming of negative self-talk has been strictly motivated by either visible examples of success or what other people have told me. I'm getting therapy right now and I'm working on like improving uh self-deprecation and acknowledging that, I am capable and that I am good at what I do, but it's very much a process. So now with rejection, I eventually got to the point with rejection because, like, when you, as a writer, if you're submitting your work, you're going to get a crap ton of rejections. And there were many instances where I would get really depressed and discouraged over it. But then like, I had a fellow poet tell me, Donnie, you want your poems to find a home in the correct publication. So if somebody rejects it, don't think of it as them thinking less of you. Think of it as your work needs to find the proper place in which it can thrive, right? So you would rather have it be in a place where it can thrive than in a place that's going to set it back, if that makes sense. You know, I hope that was a very circular answer. Now, the last question of keeping ego in check when dealing with acceptance and praise. Um, it really depends on the day. I will have days where I'll be like, hair flip. I know, like, thanks. And then I will have days where I literally just don't believe people when they say like positive things or when I see success. So it's really been about finding a healthy in between. I don't look at my work or my creativity anymore as being this like piece of vanity. I look at it as being something that could potentially make a difference. It's leaving a piece of myself behind largely because, and I know I've talked about this in prior videos, I've always been very discouraged about like suffering through this invisibility that I've always had imposed on me. Creating things helps me feel visible, and that's been my coping over the years. So that's how I kind of like distract myself from uh, going overboard with ego when it comes to acceptance and praise, because at the end of the day, it's not about me looking good. It's about me feeling fulfilled. It's about me feeling wholesome
Mm.
for myself. How
Yeah.
about you?
So instead of answering the question about negative self-talk, I have a poem from this Leonard Cohen book. The Flame. It's called If There Were No Paintings.
Ooh, okay.
If there were no paintings in the world, mine would be very important. Same with my songs. Since this is not the case, let us make haste to get in line, well towards the back. Sometimes I would see a woman in a magazine humiliated in technicolor glare. I would try to establish her in happy circumstances. Sometimes a man, sometimes living in person sat for me. May I say to them again, thank you for coming to my room. I also love the objects on the table, such as candlesticks and ashtrays, and the table itself. From a mirror on my desk in the very early morning, I copied down hundreds of self portraits, which reminded me of one thing or another. The curator has called this expedition drawn to words. I call my work acceptable decorations.
Interesting. How would you analyze that? How would you interpret that? Like if you were to break it down.
I call my work acceptable decorations.
I love that. Yeah.
I thought it
like
was appropriate.
it is very much like I think it is appropriate, but it removes the grandioseness of ego, but also acknowledges the worth of that work. Does that make sense? I like that. Piggy, I do love European poets as well. Keats is one of my favorite poets, for example. Love Keats. I also love I like oh Rudyard Kipling is pretty good sometimes. If I'm really wanting a rhyme. I also enjoy another World War One poet. Why is his name escaping me right now? He was LGBT. I am horrible. Like I swear I do have a degree in this stuff. But I can't think of his name off the top of my head right now. But I really liked that you used that poem, Ari, to answer that question. I think that was clever.
Look at me being clever.
Hair flip, hair flip. Ooh, Byron. Yes, I do enjoy Byron. Um, Siegfried Sassoon. That's the name I'm thinking of. Finally. Anywho, Siegfried Sassoon was one of the first poets, other than like Whitman, to write like a gay love poem. Although he had to keep it kind of subtle, because of, well, the time, but it just started my strong appreciation of gay love poetry. Anyway, not to be too romantic and gushy, of
Sassy.
course.
Not to be too sassy.
So do you get criticisms about putting politics in art? How do you deal with that if you receive that? If I get criticism, see, this is the one weird area where I'm confident in. If I get criticism about putting politics in my poetry, I literally tell people to F off, basically, because poetry has always, since its beginning, has been an art form serving as a social commentary on politics or cultural phenomena or so on and so forth. It's always been like this socio-political gauge on things happening at the time. So to me, it is the exact opposite of poetry to remove that stuff. I don't think all poems should need it necessarily, but if a poet should want to write about such things, I don't think there really is any basis for shaming them in doing so.
I made a Black Lives Matter painting and I got praised for it. So, I mean,
Yeah.
so I mean, I've gotten political and I haven't been
Mhm.
mistreated for it. So, I mean,
You know,
um
it's Piggy makes an interesting point, and I'm curious as to your thoughts. Politics only has a place in art if it's ambiguous. What do you think about that?
I don't know if that's necessarily the case because I've been pretty blatant about it before and I I have been kind of like a blunt tool and I think that it still has a place.
So, I agree. Like, I really do think it depends on the mode of creativity too, depending on the situation. For poetry, things tend to be pretty ambiguous most of the time because it's like poetry is meant on, um, not always abstractness, but not always direct references, but it can do that. Like, I guess that's the beautiful thing about creativity, though, is you can be as direct or indirect as you choose. If an audience doesn't like that, or if they do love it, I mean, that's their takeaway, you know? Um, Igni asks, what constitutes something as political? I think something that makes any type of social commentary on current events, things happening that have any type of social relevance, if that makes sense. I don't know, Ari, do you have a different understanding of that?
Yeah, I think that anything that talks about something that's happening in the current arena of things is political. I think the personal is political, and I think that it's hard to avoid talking about politics because if it affects our daily lives, then it's political.
Oh yeah. For me, I've always told myself, because I mean, being both of us being a part of the LGBTQ plus community, I've always kind of, for myself, believed that it is because I have a certain degree of privilege and a voice that I've grown into and become confident over, that in a way it is a type of moral responsibility to at least have some conversation or involvement of politics, because I like, there are others who don't have the luxury or safety of speaking. So I think in a way we have to speak with those people and sometimes for those people.
You wrote that really amazing poem about gay marriage,
I'm going to
about
read that one
suffering.
tonight.
Oh, really?
Thank you, by the way. I really
You
appreciate
should
you
read it
saying
right
that.
now.
If you want, I can read it right now.
You
So,
should, yes.
so I've been on my other channel, Donny Speaks, by the way. If you haven't subscribed to that yet, please do. I'm 2 subscribers away from 100 subscribers. Um, Shameless self-promotion. Go subscribe to Ari's channel too, Strange Nothings. So I've been doing this challenge called Octoember, which is me challenging myself throughout the entire month of October to write a poem per day. So um, here is a poem titled Paper Maches, and it is largely about the potential threat of a new Supreme Court justice being conservative, working with others to disempower marriage equality and other things. And I've just there are people who've been telling me that it's not a big deal, that I shouldn't worry about it. And this poem is my response to that. So here it is, Paper Maches. Please tell us we're overreacting. By all means, tell us it'll never happen because the thought of it seems so improbable to you as you update your wedding registries, go to your fittings, and have cakes eagerly made without any question or side glances. Please tell us it isn't about a piece of paper, that it's about being together. It's about the love because we mustn't know how to love after all our wasted years watching you on television from our cracked closet doors in each series that ended with a happily ever after. Please tell us how unfair it is to not have a month to celebrate your pride, as if you've not been able to since your socially awkward elementary square dance, since your first homecoming kiss, or since the first time you held hands at a family reunion while we watched and wished to know how it felt. Please pay attention. Lift the veil you'll never lose. Our bodies are yellowed paper maches, and the sequins we pretend are diamonds have lost their luster. Please keep room for our save the dates on your refrigerator doors and retract the Hallmark cards you deliver in platitudes long enough to catch us before we're torn from these altitudes. And that's it.
So good.
I was angry. I was so angry. These are just interesting times, you know. Ari, do you want to read your poem that you wrote as well?
Do you want me to read my response to your poem, or
Yeah. Oh,
sure,
thank you. Thank you, Rogue. I really appreciate you saying that.
sure, I'll pull it out of the many stacks of books that I have written. I'm on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm on my seventh book now.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Okay. It's called Hide in Plain Sight. I have a secret. When I look and smell and sound and feel and fuck like you, when I let the boys touch me like you do, when I go to your dances and share in your gossip, but I have a secret that I carry in my heart. It's quiet and still and hangs around parks sometimes. Or really, it goes to the beach and searches for meaning. But what meaning can one find in search of self when one already knows the answer?
Oh my gosh. That's so powerful. It's all like
I'm on my
understand
podcast.
understanding that that inner duality, you know, that struggle of being open with oneself, but knowing on the inside who you really are, right?
It's about being a bisexual person.
And that's an experience that is drastically not talked about. And I know we were talking about this via email too, because in the LGBTQ plus community, bisexual individuals are largely criticized and discriminated against by not only people outside of the community, but people within the community too. And I think creative outlets like this allow us to create conversations and create commentary about experiences that we may not otherwise know or understand. That's why I love it so much. That's why I find it fulfilling. Beautiful work. I love it. Oh, I'm nerding out. Ooh. Um, is there another piece that you wanted to share before we end tonight?
Sure. What question do you have, rogue agent?
I'm surprised I haven't finished my truly yet.
I know, right? I do have one more poem that I'll read. I love that this has devolved into a poetry hour.
I love it. Oh, we had planned on it though.
Yeah, we did.
Um, yeah. Let's see. It popped up. Oh, DC and Marvel extended universes, but you think they should plan on stories ahead of time.
Uh, I think that, yeah, maybe they should. I think that it's such a big universe that it's kind of impossible, and that they probably should plan on their stories ahead of time because it's such a big universe.
Well, yeah, they've created something so sweeping, you know, and there's so many characters involved in complexity. Like I think there does require a certain degree of preparation and planning, you know, before that happens. And Rogue says, like, for some, oh, okay, I was thinking of making my superhero stories. That's why I think go for it. And honestly, I can't tell a person how to do pre-writing or outlining or prep. I mean, I guess I can because that is what I do for a living. But um, like, I would just make sure that you flesh it out and have a good plan in mind first. That way, you feel secure when you're writing it. And you want to include a bi trans character. I think that's amazing. Go for it.
Sounds cool.
Yeah. So, without further ado, Ari, do you want to read that last poem?
Sure, yeah. It's called
Yay.
Change. I actually did this as my daily poem today, so I'm just reading what I did on my channel today. So it's called Change. I was thinking about long pauses today and what they meant, the sadness they conveyed of sorts. A dead fish rolls in the water next to me, belly up, and even the birds won't take it, a feeling of some black mood I am feeling when it is supposed to be all joy and happiness. I need to clear my head again. My thoughts are getting all muddled by things out of my control. Lean back and stretch. The colors are changing. A crow flies overhead. I can feel it coming for me too, whatever that thing is that used to give me so many headaches now gives me strange dreams. It all makes perfect sense.
Wow. Wow, I really like that really hit me. I love it. Like I feel like I've been in that headspace. See, I I just it make like I just think that poetry is a very interesting way of being honest with people, but also kind of reserving yourself a little bit and determining how honest you wanna be. Oh my god, Megan is here. Megan is a good friend of mine as well. So Megan says it's a conscious oh, let me scroll back up. I lost it. Megan says it's a conscious decision to state that you're apolitical in today's world. You're essentially signaling to everybody that you're okay with the current state of affairs. I do agree with that. Megan also says, thank you for making an effort to reach out, whether it's an attempt at education or just offering representation. Words matter and your actions show that. I agree. And thank you for saying that. Those are, like, in a way, perfect parting words too. What do you think?
Thank you guys for loving my poetry.
Yes. So, my friends, we really appreciate you tuning in with us and having these really interesting conversations. Ari and I love talking about the whole kitchen sink, as you can tell when it comes to our episodes, and I think that's what makes them enjoyable. So, Ari, do you have any parting words for us?
I find
I
meaning in whatever you do.
Yes, I always put you on the spot at the end. I think those are perfect parting words. Anyway, Iggy, feel free to tweet that to me on Twitter, or DM it, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in. Again, we will be here next Friday night, and we hope that you have an excellent rest of your week. Bye.
Bye.